So the trade period is well and truly finished in the AFL season, or the AFL off season that is. And I thought to myself, if every AFL club could make an ideal imaginary trade, which player would they bring in? And so I've gone through every AFL team and given your club an ideal trade, a trade that still makes sense and that is not completely out of the ordinary. Starting off with Adelaide, I've gone with a South Australian man, a defender plus a forward, very versatile, he's tall, he's elite. It's Jack Lukosius. Now currently Lukosius is at the Gold Coast Suns. The fact that he's at the Suns, so many players leave the Gold Coast Suns and GWS, that's one ideal thing. Two, like I said, he's from South Australia, so he would be likely to leave to a South Australian club, put Adelaide at Adelaide. And the third thing is Adelaide is a very attractive club at the moment. They are looking to be a powerhouse, hopefully, well, for them, in the next sort of 4 or 5 years. I mean, already this season, or sorry, next year in 2024, they could well and truly break into the top 4. We just don't know how good they're going to be, but they've got a lot of good young players, a good young coach, and that would be attractive to Jack Lukosius compared to the lifestyle and the culture and history of the Gold Coast Suns. For Brisbane, I've gone with Harrison Petty. Petty has had rumours about him leaving for quite a few seasons, or definitely the season that just passed, so it makes sense going for Petty because A, he looks likely, not likely, but there is a possibility he leaves Melbourne. There were talks about him going to the Adelaide Football Club, but you know what, go interstate, go to Queensland. Brisbane are in need of a good, versatile, you know, he can play up forward and can play in defence. Harrison Petty is a very good sort of third tall, maybe second tall at a stretch. And with Brisbane, they've got Harris Andrews, who's your main tall. You know, Payne could be a second tall, so he just fits that sort of back line. And as I said, he can move through the forward line. Now that Gunston's gone, you know, is anyone going to perform for them? We're not too sure. Be a second, third tall in the forward line. And I think that trade makes sense. It'll be a good start for him. The culture at Melbourne's fucked anyway, so you know what? I could just choose a bunch of Melbourne players to leave because they probably want to. Next up for Carlton, I've gone with a trade that may not make sense. It's not the most realistic, but I think Carlton fans will fucking froth this. It's Nick Larkey. Nick Larkey will put pressure on Harry Mackay, and imagine a forward line of Charlie Curnow and Nick Larkey. The other thing is just North Melbourne. Yes, they've got an attractive coach. Well, fuck, take that out of context, Jesus. Now, a coach that, you know, the players want to play for, you know, attractive in that sense, but just North Melbourne, the history, the fans, you know, the lack of fans, not the bad fans, but just not many fans, and just the fact that they're a shit team at the moment might not bode well with Larkey. Anyone from West Coast or North Melbourne probably would be down for a trade to a powerhouse club. Carlton look like they're going to be on top for quite a few years given their young list and their current stability. There were many players you could choose for Carlton. Do they need defenders? Yes. Do they need some consistent midfielders? Maybe? Yes. But I think Larkey just suits Carlton. You know, I can imagine Larkey in a Carlton shirt. And to be honest, I feel like Carlton should trade Harry Mackay. There's trade value there. He's just not that good. He's getting towards his 30s now. Not that that's a bad thing, actually. We've seen Tom Hawkins defy age as a forward line player, but maybe that's a good idea. Get Mackay out, free up the salary cap, and then you've got Nick Larkey. But Collingwood, look, Collingwood, they have every player they need. Their VFL team is basically as good as an AFL team. They don't need depth anywhere else, so it was hard. I've purely gone on the basis of who's old from Collingwood, and therefore who's probably going to retire in the next 3 or 4 years. I've gone with a midfielder, Caleb Sarong. I believe Sarong grew up in Wonthaggi, so he's from Victoria, from the country. And the fact he's from Victoria, he might be seeking a trade back to the Victorian state. And what better club to go to than Collingwood at the moment, the best club at the moment. Stability, good players, young players, so they're going to be on top for quite a few years. And just the state of Fremantle, the fact they have, you know, so many good young players, but they just can't put it together. They've got a useless coach. They've got players like Sean Darcy, who's been rumoured to leave. They're going to have players leave. The nature of that club, Fremantle, a bit like Gold Coast and GWS, people don't stay around because the club doesn't have history and it's not worth it. So it's a big call. Collingwood, they're going to lose Pendlebury. They're going to lose Sidebottom to age, Tom Mitchell to age. So they do have a couple older midfielders there. So Wrong, natural midfielder, might be able to roll through the wings as well. He's their pick. For Essendon, this guy makes complete sense. It's Todd Marshall. Now, I was thinking about, I forgot his name, the other Port Adelaide forward who's Greek, but I think Todd Marshall is probably a better trade for them. Is it ideal? I think so. He's always sort of been second choice to Dixon. He is that second tall. He's not a predominant main tall. But I feel like Todd Marshall would suit Essendon. Look, Essendon, their reliance on an injured Peter Wright is not good for them. And to be honest, Peter Wright, although he's had some really good seasons as of recent, is he trustworthy? I'm not so sure. Yeah, and honestly, I just think Todd Marshall really suits Essendon. That's the profile Essendon need, a sort of versatile, tall forward who does more than just kick goals. He's a very much a system player. And in terms of Port Adelaide, they do have a lot of young stars. They should be good for the next 5 years, but there's no guarantees. Is he happy at Port Adelaide? Does he want to go to Victoria? Question marks, question mark. But if you're an Essendon fan or fans of any of these clubs, let me know in the comments, what is your club's ideal trade? For Fremantle, I've got 2 names here, so I need to choose one. I'll tell you the names. It's Will Powell and Charlie Ballard. So obviously I've gone with 2 Gold Coast players. Like I've said before, Gold Coast players have a tendency to leave. I think Charlie Ballard's probably more likely to leave Gold Coast, but I think Will Powell is a better player. So take your pick. The realistic option is Charlie Ballard, who is a really good, not a main tall, but a second tall defender, shutdown defender, reliable, very consistent. And then Will Powell, who is versatile, can play on tall, can play on small. He's very skillful. He doesn't have that really big body, but his IQ and his reading of the play is very, very phenomenal. Watch Will Powell and watch Charlie Ballard in isolation. You'll realize that they are great defenders. Just like any Gold Coast player, they don't seem to get the plaudits because they're not in that Victorian sphere of football. Geelong, this one's obvious. Sean Darcy, because he has links to being or going to Geelong. His contract is ending. This just makes sense. In fact, this one is very likely to happen. Geelong need a ruck. They've always needed a ruck. Darcy's from Victoria. He's not from Perth. Fremantle are shit. Geelong, I don't know. Are Geelong going to be good next year? We don't know, but just the history, the culture, the stability of Geelong. The fact Geelong have been so good, arguably the best team for the last 15 years alongside the Hawthorn Football Club. It just is an attractive mood for any player to go to a club with that much rich history and recent history. And that recent success will draw Darcy out of Fremantle, and that any recent success from any club will draw players out of Fremantle, because Fremantle look like they're in a lot of trouble for the next 5-10 years. So that trade makes sense, and I think it'll happen. For GWS, I've gone with someone very controversial here. I've gone with Noah Bolter. Now, if you don't know, you haven't been watching the channel, I'm a Richmond fan, so I know my club in and out. I think Richmond are due for maybe a 3 to 4 year mini rebuild. Noah Bolter's already won the flag for Richmond. He's played a lot of good years. He is a very, very talented defender. So talented. You know, he's just a physical beast. Is his footy IQ there? Not so sure. He can do a lot of defensive things, but he is frail and not very defensively astute in certain parts of his game. And I just think purely in terms of he's done it for Richmond, he might have thought he's completed what he wants at this club. Does he want to move elsewhere? In GWS is currently an attractive club. Do I see this happening? No. Is it slightly realistic? I guess. If you had a gun to my head, I would say Noah Bolter will stay at Richmond for the next 5 years. But GWS, given Sam Taylor does have injury issues, given that they do need someone to sort of help up forward and even down back, Noah Bolter is versatile. He's played up forward, he's playing down back. He can even roll through the ruck and play as a second ruck through the midfield option. So there's versatility there, and there's a position that GWS do need. If Richmond get a really good deal, a lot of trade funds, then they would probably take that trade. He's really young, he's got loads of potential, so it is one to watch. Now, for the Gold Coast Football Club, I've also got 2 names there, and there's a consistent theme here. I've got Dustin Martin and Still Sidebottom. I'm just going to go with Dustin Martin. It is a little bit of a boring one because all the rumours surrounding that on the off season, the rumours that will surround that through 2024, the rumours that will keep surrounding them throughout the 2024 off season as well. It's just going to keep going till it happens. To be honest, Gold Coast, you could choose many Richmond players because of the links. You know, I wouldn't blame if you said Nathan Broad might want to go up there. I wouldn't blame if you said Dustin Martin might want to go up there. Any Richmond player who might be a little bit older and looking for a new challenge, it just makes sense. Dimmer's in Gold Coast, Dimmer's coached them at Richmond, makes sense. Come together, easy trade. And the easiest one is Dustin Martin. Does he want a new life in the Gold Coast? Maybe. Does he have all his support system, his businesses, his just life down in Victoria? Yes, he does. Is that going to stop him? I'm not so sure. I'm less bullish about this trade in a sense of will it happen? I think it's a perfect trade for Gold Coast. He's going to bring experience to Gold Coast, a bit like Luke Hodge when he went from Hawthorn to Brisbane. In fact, it's quite the mirror trade. He's still a phenomenal player. He should have made the All-Australian. Honestly, Dusty had a fucking sick 2023. Look at the stats, look at the player. So he's still got a lot in the tank, unlike the Fifes and Dangerfields. Dusty's aging like fine wine. And he'll just bring his wealth of knowledge to Gold Coast, and linking up with Dimmer again, that could be pretty scary. For the Hawthorn Football Club, I've gone with Bailey Smith. Makes plenty of sense. Bailey Smith does not strike me as someone who would want to move into state. Bailey Smith barracked for Hawthorn throughout his, when he was younger. A bit like Jack Ginnivan, he does obviously have a soft spot for Hawthorn. The Dogs just never seem to find a right place for him. He's always in the midfield and then he's pushed up the forward line or on the wings, somewhere where he doesn't want to be. And a little bit like Josh Caddy at the Cats, if anyone remembers him. Caddy only came to Richmond because he just couldn't get midfield time at the Cats. Bailey Smith could be quite a similar case where Bont is obviously always going to be picked over him. Libba and McRae, they are getting older, but they're still ahead of him. Even when Josh Dunkley goes, players like, Trelaw and others just seem to get ahead of him in the midfield, and I wouldn't blame him for wanting to move to a club that he loves and just a club that does have a good young list with a good coach. It's an attractive move for Bailey Smith. The Dogs can probably get a lot of stuff for him, a lot of picks, a lot of freeing up of space. Makes sense. For Melbourne, I've gone with a colossal one here. I've gone with Jamara Ugle-Hagan. Now, Aaron Norton has signed a massive deal at the Dogs, so he's going to stay there for a while. I don't think Aaron Norton's great. In fact, he's not that good at all. He got the same amount of goals as Ollie Henry in 2023. And when I saw that stat, I was honestly bewildered. And that just sort of shows you that Norton is quite overrated. The funny thing with Jamara is, will he lead the Dogs? I honestly think there's a chance. Bevo is not the coach for me. He's volatile as a coach. Therefore, subsequently, the Dogs are volatile as a team. They can finish top 4 one year and out the 8 the next. So, there's no guarantees at the Dogs. When you look at Melbourne, the fact they've got Petrarca who's in his prime, they've got Oliver in his prime. Melbourne have a lot of good young talent. That could be an attractive move for Jamara. If he's not the main forward at the Dogs, if he's promised to be the main forward at Melbourne, will he make that move? I honestly see a world where he would. The Dogs will not want to let him go, but if they get a fat fucking offer from Melbourne, the Dogs have Darcy in their wings. Like I said, Norton, they have those other forward young players. So it won't hurt them too much, and I honestly think Melbourne are dying. They're crying out for a good, young, talented, tall forward. Ben Brown's failed, Wiedemann's failed, so many fails up forward for Melbourne. They just had a good forward, they would have won another flag by now. The trade makes sense. For North Melbourne, I've gone with Nick Blakey, purely because his dad has history to that club. It just makes a little bit of sense, the family ties. If North Melbourne turn into a powerhouse in 4 years' time, if Sydney sort of drop off in 4 years' time, will Blakey want to leave? Maybe. Not the most realistic trade, but North Melbourne could use with a consistent defender who can provide some offensive traits. And I mean, Nick Blakey is such an exciting player. I would not blame any club for going for him. And Sydney just always have a knack of having a really good backup. They lose Jordan Dawson, they find good backups. It's just a constant cycle at Sydney. They've got it down pat there. A very, very good club. And although it's unlikely, I think it's a trade that makes sense for perhaps both. For Port Adelaide, I've gone with Oscar Allen. Charlie Dixon is getting on. They need another tall forward. Is someone like Todd Marshall going to leave, or the other forward who's the Greek guy, I've got his name before. So there is a position there for Port Adelaide. Look, Port Adelaide have obviously signed so many tall players on the offseason. Radagalia, they've signed fucking Soldo, they've signed Sweet, they've signed Zerk Thatcher. But Radagalia and Zerk Thatcher look to be playing in the defence now that Jones is gone, and the other two are rucks. So none of them are really an out-and-out forward. If West Coast are looking terrible for the next 5 years, if there is going to be just a colossal rebuild, Oscar Allen, he's going into his prime, so he's still pretty young. He would want to get some success. He's not going to get it at the Eagles. Go join another club, and that club would be Port Adelaide with loads of good young talented midfielders. They would look likely to always be a decent team. For Richmond, one of the most realistic trades is Tom Green coming to the Tigers. His dad played for Richmond. Every trade season, every trade window that happens, all the Richmond Instagram accounts I follow, the fan accounts, always talk about this trade. Tom Green, he's worth so much. I mean, a big-bodied, absolute bull, young, so much fucking talent, so much. The ceiling for Tom Green is so high. So Richmond are going to have to give up a fuck ton to get him there, but given the family connections, given the fact is at GWS, which is a club that doesn't have history, and we've seen a lot of good players leave there before, especially midfielders. We've seen Trelaw, Adams, Steele, Taranto, Hopper. I could keep naming them, Shield. Always, one of their best midfielders leaves. Why can't Tom Green leave? And I think the trade makes sense. Richmond need young players because they're going to go through a mini rebuild. Tom Green's one of those. Let's do it. Make that trade happen. Oh my God, I would fucking froth that trade so hard. Now we have got trades for the St Kilda Football Club. Very realistic. I've gone with Ben King. Honestly, it just is destined to happen. Join the brother, Max and Ben King, playing together like they did in junior footy, playing AFL. Ben King at the Gold Coast Suns. Look, like I've said before, anyone from Gold Coast, especially Gold Coast, but also GWS and Fremantle, maybe some other clubs, they are always likely to leave just because that's what Gold Coast do. They're a new club. No one wants to stay there. The lifestyle on the Gold Coast isn't for everyone. If St Kilda offered Ben King or offered Gold Coast a load load for Ben King, I think they'll take it. And just for St Kilda, do they need Ben King? Not necessarily, but players like Membry are getting on, and we've seen with Max and Ben King, they're always injured. So the likelihood is they might not even play together if they're on the same team because one will be injured. So they do need some defensive stocks there. We've seen in 2023 the injuries in the forward line they had and how that affected them. Bring in a young, talented key forward like Ben King, you're looking good. For the Sydney Football Club, I've gone with Tim English. Now I believe Tim English might be from WA. I'm not so sure about that, but I honestly see a world where Tim English is just not favoured at the Dogs. I know he's their #1 ruck and has been, and the Dogs have put a lot of time and patience into him. But if the Dogs turn out not to be a great team in the next couple of years, Sydney will always be a good team, you know, with their youth system, with the coach, with the culture of the Bloods. That's an attractive proposition for any player. Sydney need a ruck. They've always needed a ruck. They've got Brody Grundy, but he's old, and look, he's not looking like to be the most amazing player, so why not get a young ruck in Tim English? Offer the Dogs a load, get him in, makes sense. Tim English would be more likely to get success at Sydney than the Dogs. I'm not so sure about that. Look, to be honest, you could go with any young ruck here. I've just chosen Tim English because he's a great ruck, and it is an ideal trade, but is it likely to happen? Probably not. For the Dogs, I've gone with Jeremy McGovern. The Dogs have always needed, for the longest of time, defensive stocks. Honestly, since I've been watching the AFL, the Dogs have always struggled in their defense. Their key defenders just are either out injured or not good enough. Jeremy McGovern or Tom Barrass. You know what? Choose one of them. I haven't put Barrass in this list. Barrass is another shout for Sydney as well. Look, now that McCartan's retired, Tom Barrass to Sydney would actually make sense. So for Sydney, let's put Tom Barrass there, maybe instead of Tim English. But anyway, for the Dogs, McGovern, look, he's still a good player. He's still got years left in the tank. We've seen how good he is. You know, he's one of the best defenders in the last 10 years. And just because West Coast are shit, he might want a new challenge. He might want to get out of Perth, go to the Victoria, and then enjoy life and play for the Dogs, who might be a good team. Once again, I don't know about the Dogs. They're going to be good, going to be bad, but West Coast definitely won't be good for the next 3-4 years, and the Dogs will definitely be better. So I think it's a good proposition, and it makes sense for both teams. The Eagles, just get rid of your older players, get some money for them, get some trades in, and they're both happy. Finally, for the West Coast Eagles, I have got 3 names here. Scott Pendlebury, still side bottom, and Shea Bolton. Now, you could look at this in the sense of, for experience to help nurture the young players, you could go with a side bottom or a Pendlebury. I just have this feeling that Collingwood players won't want to go to West Coast because of the rivalry. But in a rebuild, you always need those more experienced players to nurture the young talent. It can't just be every young player, you know, no one's over the age of 30, because then no one knows how to lead. No one knows how to lead the young players, and the young players are lost and their careers are in a detriment. In that respect, go for Pendles or side bottom. Shea Bolton, he's from Western Australia. Richmond look to be not the greatest club in the next 3-4 years, just won't be that good. Normal West Coast, but purely because the Western Australian links, you know, will he want to move back to WA? There's a chance. There's always a chance with interstate clubs, and I think that's a trade that any team wants. I mean, Shea Bolton is a young, talented X-factor, star in the forward line, star in the midfield. If he's just a bit more consistent, he could break into those Brownlow shouts, and any club wants him. Look, Fremantle could have him, but I think he suits West Coast a bit more. It hurts to say this from my standpoint because he is from my club, but look, if he wants to go, let him go. Richmond can get a lot of trade for him as well. And that is it. They are all the trades that I think your team would want. But let me know in the comments, like I said previously, let me know what your club's ideal trade is. If they had to be traded in 2024, for the future, for the now, whatever you want to choose, let me know in the comments. Follow the TikTok FTFooty, I post every day, so follow that. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll be seeing you in another video.